Welcome, Dawn. I am so grateful that you joined me today for our podcast. And we have already been talking. And so we're just going to start recording again right here because this is what we do as therapists. We get so connected with somebody and we start right in. And that's what we did. So let's
Mhm.
backtrack a little bit and for my listeners, our topic today was going to be around saying no for self-care purposes. And so we were just discussing kind of how that came to be for you, Dawn, and you were sharing a personal experience. I'd love to just dive back into that because it's been so powerful for me in just 5 minutes.
Oh, so in December of 2023, I went to the psychotherapy conference in Anaheim and stumbled into Gabor Mate's meeting room, and he was promoting his book, The Myth of Normal. That was his big push. It was crowded. It was crazy. But the first question he asked was, where in your life are you not saying no?
Mm.
And I, in my life, have not had the opportunity to say no a lot. I think I was trained little to not say. I'm a foster child, and I've had a lot of pretty intense experiences as a young person. And no wasn't really something that I think was trained into me, even though
Mm.
I've been in therapy since I was 15 and started university at 17, 18, and started studying psychology. So it was just not something that I was really practiced at or had thought of.
Yeah.
So I knew exactly where my no was sitting. At that time, I've been struggling with some intestinal issues, physical
Mm.
issues, and I had pneumonia twice last year.
Oh my
And so
God.
even to stumble into his room was difficult because I didn't feel well. I felt sick.
Mm.
And I continuously kept ending up in the hospital. I wasn't able to eat. I was only 117 pounds, which for
Oh
me,
my
very,
goodness.
very light, right?
Right.
And so I was just determined to go to the conference anyway because I wanted to. And so he was actually the only meeting I was able to go to, the
Wow.
whole conference, to get out of the bed to go to. But I made it. And at that time, when it occurred to me, the thing that I wasn't saying no to, and it was a whole practice. It was in I have a nonprofit counseling center that I run, that I started in 2006, and I have a NorCal location, I have a Long
Mhm.
Beach location, and I have a Palm Desert location. And
3 locations for your group practice, your counseling practice, right?
yes,
And
yes,
as we said, it's both online, in person, 3 locations. Windowsofhopecounseling.org. Be sure to check it out because it's a gorgeous website with so much there.
mm-hmm.
Beautiful. And you can see my lovely guest.
It's a really cool center for affordable counseling. I've really
Oh,
set it up in a way so that um, anyone can come in and walk in without insurance to
wow.
be seen, and I love that about it. It's on a sliding scale. It's quite
Mhm,
wonderful.
mhm.
Um, so anyway, I had NorCal open. I had a bunch of students over there working for me, and I was like that. Flying back and forth was just taking it out of me.
Right.
And even when I was sitting there and I thought, I know where I'm not saying no, it's to shutting that down. Uh, I was like, well, where am I going to put everybody?
Oh, shutting
No,
down that location,
the whole location.
the whole location,
So
right?
I don't
Which
have to
was
fly back and
serving.
forth.
Right.
Mm,
And serving all of these clients who needed affordable care, accessible care. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, it's
And
taking a toll on me, right?
on you. I know. I hear that. And can I just say for a minute, because I don't have 3 locations like you do, but I have that same desire. I love that you offer these accessible, affordable services, right? That it's a nonprofit. I haven't done that step, but I admire and respect that so much. And I think it's kind of a unicorn in our field these days. And for you to be doing that in California is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
and so needed. And I really acknowledge you for that. And we do share that bond of like passion for mental health access and awareness.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah. Um, there's a whole story about that too. But, and so that's why it was so difficult to shut it down.
Wow.
And I had made up my mind. As soon as he asked the question, I processed it in my body. And here were the questions that came to me and my process. One was, where in my life am I not saying no?
Hmm.
Um, when did I not say no this week,
Hmm.
specifically? What was the impact on me that when I didn't say no? And what is my belief about myself that kept me from saying no? And who would I be if I did say no?
Hmm.
Those were all questions I answered. And then,
This is gold.
right?
Amazing. Right.
Beautiful, right? Beautiful.
Right. Right.
Um, after watching him, that's what I wrote down in my notes. I wrote down a lot of notes. That was the specific piece, and I immediately went into action and started shutting it down. And knew then it's not my
Mhm.
responsibility to help people find placement. Not the clients, yes, of
Right.
course. The students, I didn't need to help them with that necessarily. I did help them. I
Mhm.
didn't need to find placement for them. That would be their
Exactly.
responsibility.
Right.
Uh,
Maybe they
so
had universities that could help with their placements.
yes,
Hmm.
and I definitely encouraged and offered ideas and went through the process with them. I did not take responsibility for that,
Mm.
for placement. So that's a difference, right? I can
Right.
guide, I can support, I can help, and I can offer ideas. But we many of the time when we don't say no, it's because we're taking responsibility for what isn't ours.
Mm.
And so I learned that in that beat as well. That it is not my responsibility to make sure that it's all handled. It's my responsibility to support
Hmm.
the process. So it was done beautifully. We all left in love and happiness.
Oh,
Everybody found placement, including the clients, within about a month and a half.
amazing.
Beautiful. Since then,
Yes.
I've gained 15 pounds. I haven't had pneumonia. I haven't been in the hospital. I'm
Hmm.
sleeping in my own bed.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful. So your body responded, that physicality responded to this boundary that was not healthy for you on a bunch of levels.
yes, and I
Hmm.
and an important part of this is I wasn't aware of that. I I I think that we need to keep in mind that many times our clients and ourselves as therapists and in our relationships, we're like the frog in the pot, right? When they cook a frog, they put it in the cold water, and you've heard this one before,
Yes.
and then they turn up the hot water and they cook. We are that. We are in a process of subtle and continuous flow. And before we know it, we can be in something that we don't realize. And we don't think to change it, and we don't know the impact. Um,
Yes.
right? So,
Exactly.
yeah. Uh,
And Don, so I think that's really important. I think so many of us would agree, like maybe we don't have that self-awareness of needing to say no.
yes.
And like you said, it did come to you when you were in that lecture and you realized it almost like a full body realization. You knew what you needed to say no to. But often we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we need to like be able to see those signs. What are those signs or tells that we can look for when we really need to start saying no and having that boundary?
Yeah, I would say let's make it a daily practice, and let's
Hmm.
ask those questions every single day in our journaling, or even just in our shower as we start our day. Where in my life am I not saying no? And where this week or today have I not yet said it? And It could just be a drawer that I'm cleaning out. I try to say no to something every day and to clear
Mm-hmm.
the space.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we practice that, the more we can listen to our body and understand what we need. Um, and then the more research I did on this, and the more I read about it, and the more I looked at my notes, the more I understood what was happening. And that is that the emotional system and the immune system are the same system.
Yeah.
The emotions have nowhere else to go but into our immune system and into our energetic connection with our body. And so we will immediately come down with these immune disorders when we don't say no,
Yeah.
when we don't process what is happening. And the biggest issue here is, and that's why I was getting sick, right? I was getting sick
Yeah.
because I was just not even knowing that I wasn't responding to something that I needed to respond to for myself. My body was yelling at me, telling me, but everything else.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
what? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm sure some of our listeners are kind of holding their breath because we know what you're saying and we feel that like, oh, why am I so tired this week? Or why is this happening to me? Like I think it's almost visceral when you describe it this way that we all know there is probably some place we're not saying no. And
Mm-hmm.
I really acknowledge that here you are, a leader, like a CEO and a therapist, and you're sharing these really vulnerable circumstances where you got so sick, where you had to close a location, but it ended up for the good.
Mm-hmm. It
Yeah.
really did. It really
Yeah.
did. You and I talked a little bit about the couples work as well. And so
Hmm.
I invite in this idea into our relationships too. And the other concept to maybe look at or to process is this idea of attachment and authenticity.
Hmm.
My authentic self is the part of me that has my yeses and nos stored in it. Um, and when I'm in relationship, many times, whether it be with my work or a client or my husband or my children, their authenticity is in direct relationship with attachment. So if my attachment wound is strong, which mine is,
Yes.
um, my choosing authenticity, choosing my no or choosing my yes, will be in will put my attachment in danger.
Right.
Many times when authenticity and attachment are at odds, we choose attachment
Hmm. Yes.
over authenticity. So part of it is to notice our bodies whenever we're saying no, the reactivity, the energy, whatever's happening to me when I'm doing that. What is happening for me, and then of course speaking to my therapist about that and processing it,
Hmm.
so that I can um, understand myself better and maybe what's happening, um, because many times we'll choose that we'll choose that attachment pain with our fear
Exactly.
over
Right.
the right over
Yeah,
the
and it's so protective most of the time, right? When we choose that. Um, I heard a really interesting thing the other day that was it's kind of based around this same notion of like where our wounds are. And so the person was saying like let's say, you show up at, a party or a work event and somebody is just really praising you for this thing you did and flattering you and giving you all these compliments and that feels good, right? And then especially like if that was something that an unmet need that you got, right? You got met by their compliment and praise. And then if they ask you, hey, so would you be willing to take on this project or take on this board position or whatever like that? Very often your reflex is going to be yes, because
yes
you've just received that kind of that need being met. And instead of saying no, you take it on, right? Like that would seem like another way that It happens in like regular life all the time.
Yeah, and we need to be careful about that too, because some people know that that's how people work. So
Yeah.
they might, right, they might, if they're intuitive at all, they might
Hmm.
use a compliment to try to get you to do something they want you to do. So it is important to listen to our body in those circumstances, I think. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a, you know, just a basic example that I'm sure most of us have experienced, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Well,
Um,
we've experienced it. I mean, we're both women here.
mhm.
Just even being approached um, by people. Uh, Many times we need to say no, and people are afraid to do that. And I'm constantly coaching clients on that one. It's okay to say no, or that you need more space between you and another person, or to not to disengage from a conversation if you need to, because they find themselves, well, I knew I felt uncomfortable, but then he kept getting closer. I didn't know how to, I didn't want to hurt his feelings. And then more serious things happened. And so
Right.
I think on a larger level, we need to know when to say, hey, and be direct. Like, I like you standing over there, just not this close, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And, you know, we could be very kind and direct about many of these types of situations. So I love that we're talking, even bringing that in, because
Hmm.
I'm a lot of the time talking to young women specifically about that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love something you said just a few minutes ago, and it was really important about the daily practice. And what if we ask ourselves this on a daily practice, almost like a meditative or spiritual practice of what do I need to say no to today? And it strikes me that that can be spiritual because often we think we have to be in this very open, receiving, and giving place to be in like our spiritual essence. And what you're really saying is we have to look at the other side too. We have to look at how we preserve our own integrity. Maybe that's our own, kind of holy integrity or whatever you believe by saying no.
I love that you said that. Yes, love is honest.
Mm.
Love is kind, it's also honest. And many times, if we don't say no, or we don't share our experience, right, because we're trying to be too nice or
Yeah.
soft, that's not really connection, and it's really not love for myself or the other person. It's
Hmm.
always honest. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably ties in to what you see working with addiction. Both of us have done a lot of work with addiction. We're both pretty long-time therapists. When did you tell me you've been a therapist for how long?
Yeah, I started. Well, I started going to therapy in let's see, so it's about 40 years. 40 years ago,
Yeah.
I started going to therapy, and I started school in 2000. Let's see, no, not 2000, 1987. I just aged myself terribly.
Yeah. Well, we're both from the
1987. I started.
1900s. We're both from the
Yeah,
1900s, Dawn.
I was born in
It's
the
okay.
60s. You know, back
Yeah,
when things were
me too.
free love. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it started in the 80s. I started
Hmm.
all the John Bradshaw days.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
yeah, Mnuchin, Bowen, Virginia
Hmm.
Satir. I was very like in that whole flow. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyhow, you've been practicing a very long time and also being a client, and that's wonderful. And really that's what we
Uh-huh.
want, to always be growing and evolving ourselves. Um, with that, and when we work with folks in the throes of addiction, right, we're also really grappling with these issues of authenticity, of of connection, disconnection, saying no, boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And saying yes. Um, yes, saying yes to some behaviors that are that we can include with addiction specifically,
Hmm.
right? It's saying yes to connection, because the opposite of addiction is connection, and in honest connection
Right.
and flow. And so I love that you're bringing the spirituality piece in, because that's exactly right.
Hmm.
How can I really show up? connected if I am not saying all of my yeses and nos clearly and choosing authenticity over my pain, my attachment pain.
Yeah.
Now I honor my attachment pain, include her in everything, because my little 3-year-old self, who was in foster home abruptly and lived in addiction
Mm.
with people in an unsafe environment, she understands attachment well. And so I need to hold her and honor her through my nose. So we're going to be
Yeah.
okay. It's going to be wonderful because we have me now and I
Right.
get it done. And so it's
She
going to be
trusts you
okay.
now.
Mm-hmm.
She has someone who takes care of her and gives her security, relational security.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so, Dawn, for you, right? And thank you for sharing, your personal experience. And I think that just it helps so many other people feel less alone, right? That we're really humans here doing this work. And so, right, you're saying like I was a system kid, right? You had all of these adverse experiences and trauma. You did not have power and permission for yeses and nos as a kid, as a child.
No, ever.
Yeah. Ever.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No. I learned it this year.
How powerful. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Congratulations, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. I learned it was cool because as soon as we made it conscious,
Mhm.
and now I can utilize it and share it and connect with it. And um, yeah, I think we feel safer in a no, an honest no,
Mhm.
than we do in a slippery kind of okay, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
yeah, even and some of the things that I'm not saying no to, I'm just aware of it. I might not
Mm.
be ready or strong enough to say no today or to make it happen. I can be aware of it and speak to it and have
Mhm.
a relationship with my part that's not ready for that, and that's okay too. Um, it's on my 5-year vision list. Like I'm going to
So there's
create
so
that.
much, yes, so much vision and intentionality in this work, in your personal work. And that's a really big part of it, something for us to keep including. Like, think about that intentionality of looking at these questions, journaling on them, whether it's daily, weekly. What is your 5-year plan for yourself, these souls that we are, right?
Mhm. Yes. And then putting some SMART goals together, some specific,
Mhm.
measurable, attainable, relatable, and time. I really love that. It gives me a map of some kind to create the journey. So I like to know, I like my 5-year vision. I like my um, relatable goals. I like my specific ideas with written in pencil
Mm.
so that I can add and subtract, move things
Yes.
around. Yes. So there's
Uh,
definitely flexibility because things change. Hmm.
Right, right. Which is part of the yeses and nos. Things change. Exactly. What do you think um makes it so challenging for so many of us to not say no, to not set those boundaries? I mean, that's a big question. I'm sure there's a lot of social and cultural reasons and
Oh yeah, I think there's that, and it's directly in correlation with that attachment piece. I think most of our reactivity and our inability to speak or
Mhm.
our inability to get certain things done or to know we have a choice has to do with that attachment pain.
Mm.
It has to do with the fear that's behind the loss, if I do say it.
Yeah,
Loss of culture, as you were saying. Um, Religion is a big piece of that for a lot of people who are connected with religion.
right. Feeling
They,
guilty.
yes, the guilt thing.
Mm.
We absolutely disinvite shame, blame, or
Yeah.
criticism from work that we do.
Mhm.
And I hope that we're all doing that, clearing the space from that. You're right, though, because cultural processes of our family are going to have a direct impact on, well, I need to live in this area, or I need to pick this job, or I'm a female, or I'm a male, and this is my requirement, or my where I need to be in this. So I think there's a lot of expectations that we need to sometimes unlearn.
Mhm.
And I know it's harder. We have a lot of privilege here where we live in the
Yeah.
United States,
Right.
where we can do that somewhat.
Mhm.
Some people are more restricted than others. Um, what I love is that we're offering choice. That's the other thing I do. I do a whole. I've written a lot about freedom to choose. Um, when um, when I was a young student, I want to say in the early 90s, I had a professor very similar to me. He had a private practice and he would come in and he would talk with us. He taught one course, two courses, something like that. And he asked how many people went to that Marilyn Manson concert the other night. I guess there was a concert. I had no
Yeah.
idea, but I was studying. But he said, did you know that? Because I guess he worked with people who are directly correlated with um, extreme abuse.
Oh,
And he
okay.
said, people's ability to choose are all different.
Mhm.
He said, people who've experienced extreme abuse don't have ability to choose.
Exactly. Right.
And so what is our goal here? A lot of our work as a therapist or as a human is to help people know that they have choice.
Mm. I'm
And the answer is never to take that away.
right. I'm
The
so
answer is
with
to
you.
say, hey,
Yeah.
we have it. We have choice, and now we can work together to create the best one for you. But
Yeah.
we have it.
Yeah.
We
And
don't
and
want to lose that.
baby steps in helping somebody practice choosing because with that kind of trauma, right? They've never had the opportunity to choose. That was always taken away from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's really critical. I love that you're talking about that, like really that permission-based work and um
Uh,
yeah.
and so that's what I guess that's the ultimate roundabout answer to that question would be,
Hmm.
do I even know I can say no? Do I
Yeah.
know I have that choice? And maybe our work could be centered around, do you? Let's find
Hmm.
out. And what are your choices? And what could it look like?
Yeah.
And can we co-create that?
Mm. Right.
So thank you.
Co-create. We need some help with this. And so that kind of leads me to your process, right? Like this happened for you. You were able to say no and make some big shifts in your business and then also in your health and your life. What was supportive for you? Did you do journaling? Did you have somebody to talk
Mm.
to through this? Like, because I think a lot of listeners will be listening to this and kind of feeling triggered a little in the sense that, yep, I've got some things I have to work on. I have to like look at my yeses and nos and how am I going to do this? So,
Well, I first gave myself permission to not to just live in that I'm not saying no.
okay.
So not to do it yet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give myself permission to um, be in a place where I know I'm not doing it and live with that for a minute and have relationship with that part of me.
So
That
compassionate. So
yes,
much compassion there.
right, and that is what we're evolving into actually with our couples work. We're evolving into compassionate connection work, and that's what we're
Yeah.
calling it, which is pretty cool that you use that language, compassion. And that's what I did. I give myself permission, even if I notice and know that I could be in my experience of still not saying it but noticing it.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that part of me believe? Because remember, there's parts to this. Where am I not saying no? How is it impacting me? So I'm gonna visit that for a minute, and then I'm going to what is the belief about me? Like, what does it mean about me that I don't have that location,
Yeah.
because it meant something about me, or it was in my belief system that that was an important part of me. It was part of my existence. It was part of my, I'm not confident 100%, but
Identity,
I was playing with the idea. I
of
didn't
course.
just jump to know, and
Mm.
it
Yeah.
took me
Yeah.
a process. And of course, working it out with my therapist.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I happen to have a pretty cool family. I have a husband and two daughters that live with me right now
Oh,
after COVID,
wonderful.
that grown up
Nice.
daughters, and um, just shared with them and processed with them. And they were raised by a therapist, so we
They're used to it.
so they're used to it. So we talked and we
Yeah.
processed, and then we went into action, and um, we
Oh.
we just started to make that move. But I
Mm.
think I like the idea of journaling it every day if writing helps.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I think talking with your therapist, of course, because hopefully we all have those wonderful people in our life to talk with. I did join the Compassionate Inquiry group, um,
Oh,
so I processed with them. That's Gabor Mate's group.
okay. Right. And so you're still studying with Gabor Maté and this whole compassion
Yes,
inquiry. That's amazing.
yeah, they're intensive. I'm every week we meet, and
Uh-huh.
we have in some weeks a couple times, and um, we get to process with each other and practice. And so if something's up, we can talk with each other about that. And so even a consulting group would be good if you had
Hmm.
a group of people who could um, process with you, do some of that deeper work. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just so curious. Not everybody really knows what this compassionate inquiry
Oh,
is. Can you share a little about that and maybe like what you do in the groups?
yes, for sure. Gabor Mate and Satyaram started it with each other. She just noticed that he was doing some really great work. He was a medical doctor
Hmm.
who realized that his patients, most of them had these phys- therapeutic issues that were more psychological in nature, that were not physical, that were affecting the physical.
Hmm.
And so he started to therapize with them because they couldn't afford therapy. So he started doing deeper, compassionate work with them
Mm.
to help them find the source of their pain. And the best, this is my little summary of
Yeah.
his process. And so him and Satyaram came together and created a process where they could teach people how to inquire compassionately. It's
Mm.
very much Carl Rogers with imago therapy, which I'm also trained in and certified
Yes.
in. It's a combination of those two things, some Dan Siegel stuff,
Hmm.
the body keeps the score, and internal family systems. Since I've been doing it, it seems like there's a
Right.
flow between all those practices that he's combined to create his practice.
Yes.
And I've since taken it and put it into couples. And so that's what I'm calling compassionate connections. So I'm having couples do
Okay.
it with each other.
Amazing.
So weekly we meet, and there's a process of what is the thing that is keeping me from experiencing what's up for me today. What is the thing that is deeper that is getting in the way of my week? We deepen into that, what I'm experiencing in my body uh, when that happens, and then when was the very first time I felt that? How
Mm.
old was I? What was happening?
Right. Little parts
Uh,
work there, maybe.
Little parts were,
Yeah.
and then we from there give it an opportunity to speak.
Oh.
um, I have taken it a little different flow because I've already been doing this kind of work before I joined him, and that I add John Bradshaw.
Hmm.
Do you remember John Bradshaw
Of
back in the
course.
day, 80s?
Yeah.
Very cool work. So I've invited in some of that where we go in and make some changes,
Hmm.
like he
Right.
used to do, right?
To the
Like go
child
in there.
within. Yeah.
Mhm. Like we go into the room, look around, what can we do? So we do some more experiential stuff. Uh, but a lot of people that are part of his group are not necessarily therapists. There's lots
Hmm.
of different
Yeah.
professions. So that's just what I'm doing with it, and he gives you full permission to do
Hmm.
whatever. Um,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And
mhm.
I also really believe in, being able to, with your own skills and experience, go out of the box a little bit, right? So for whatever is most needed for the client you're working with.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, for sure. I think so.
Hmm.
That's what joining is all about, right? We,
Yes. Right. Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
So Don, when you mentioned that example of the compassion inquiry, and if you were working with a couple, would you ask something like, like what is getting in the way of you connecting, or what would be a question you would ask with a couple?
Well, what I would have them do is looking at each other.
Hmm.
I would have what I would like to share today, or the thing that's on my heart today,
Hmm.
the thing that I want to that I need to talk about today, if we're in structured process, and then the partner would mirror imago style. So what
Okay.
I heard you say,
Mm.
which is also part of the compassionate inquiry experience as well. But what I heard you say, is there more? Did I
Hmm.
get you? Um, so then the partner would mirror the things that,
Beautiful.
and then I would guide the deeper work and have the
Yes.
partner mirror.
Hmm.
So what that reminds me of when I was little, what was happening for me, what I needed most, and what's missing for me, or what was missing for me, and then have the partner offer the part of it that could be the compassionate part.
Exactly. And
Right.
that's when the
Makes sense.
healing in relationship happens.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I really see how even attachment figures in there, that's a huge part of the work again.
Yeah, the attach. I think I believe. I mean, I'm kind of old school, but I believe that attachment's at the base of almost all of our reactivity.
Hmm.
Um, our reactivity in our body, or in our experience, our inability to say no, our inability to say yes, our experiential pain source is in direct proportion with whatever my attachment pain was when I was little. I really um,
Yeah.
was trained that way, but I really believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a little old
And
school.
and you've also seen it play out in your own life, and the healing that can come from that. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's it's powerful when we can look at this from all the levels of, like you started with, also the body, the somatic level, right? You were
Mm-hmm.
getting sick, you were losing weight, like there was, your body was also giving you information. And when we can help our clients look at all of the different arenas that they can see where their yeses and nos are or aren't being honored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if we break it down like that, instead of using the language that we're used to, and we just say, "Where
Mhm.
am I not saying no? What is the impact?" It feels like easier than I can answer
I
that
am
question.
all for easy, so much better.
Because if you start talking about boundaries, it's like, well, now I'm cutting off, and now I don't know how to do that, and what does that mean? And I don't. But where for me today, because yesterday was different than today. Yesterday me could handle something that today me
Yeah.
maybe can't, or opposite. Like I don't know what tomorrow me is going to be ready for.
Hmm.
I know what today me needs, and I know what it needs to say no to. I can check in
Hmm.
with myself and
Yeah.
find that. And yoga seems to be my best way to find it.
Nice. Oh, great. Yeah.
Moving the body, feeling it, opening the heart, feeling the
Hmm.
experience. That seems to be the best way for me.
Yeah.
But everybody's different.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
I love that, making it easy so that we can all do it, right? I mean, it kind of goes into what you were saying about establishing your nonprofit so that it's easy for people to get the care that they need.
Mhm.
And we need that too. We need, as therapists, we're stressed out. We need what's easy for us to figure out our own boundaries, our own yeses and nos.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and the process is easy. Like if we do have a journal, let's say every
Mhm.
day, where in my life am I not saying no? Or we don't even have to say in my life. We could say, where am I not saying no today? What has been the impact this week on me for
Mhm.
not doing it? We don't have to do it. We don't need to be afraid of it because we could still just live in relationship with the fact that we're not saying no. It's okay.
Yeah.
We
Right. You
don't.
have that compassion. You have to start there with that compassion. Exactly.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
invite that in,
Right.
and so then we just go through that every day. We say, where am I not saying no? Where what is the impact on me?
Mhm.
What do I believe about myself that's keeping me? Who would
Mm.
I be if I did say no?
Yeah.
And what am I not saying yes to every
Yeah.
day?
That's so good.
This is another thing I started doing, is doing a lot more podcasts. I've been guesting on podcasts.
Wow.
I didn't have
Fabulous.
time for that before.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have, and I really believe in offering free community education and love and connection. I really believe in it. We don't have enough people, I think, enough opportunities for people to find good information. And so I love that you're doing this. This is
Oh,
great.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
And I am heartfelt with you that we can impact more people, whoever the audience is, when we can share with them. And you have so many gifts that you're offering. So that's really great that now you have time to do some podcasts.
Yes. This is really what's filled in that time of the travel,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
this is really, and it doesn't take up as much time as, so I think it's a better use of my information, and so
Mhm.
that's what I'm saying yes to now.
Yeah. That's I love it. That's great. Even as you were just saying that, and I'll make sure to include in the show notes those questions that are part of this process of saying no and that you so beautifully described. But as you were saying that, I was thinking like I really have a pretty good example, and I was probably also doing some work with my own therapist on this. So, with a little like vulnerability, right? The last few days I've been for exercise, I go for a run, just kind of like in the neighborhood. We have nice places to run here in Maine, so it's lovely. We're across the continent, Don.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so lately I've just been so tired, and each day I think, oh, I'm gonna put on my shoes and I'm gonna feel better. I'm gonna have that pep in my step, and I don't. And then today, like I did not, I was still tired, and I'm not listening. Clearly, I'm not listening to my body because my body is like, you're tired. I'm not saying yes to rest. I get that. Right. And what would it mean? Would it mean I'm lazy or I'm going to be, out of shape? You know, like I can already
Yes.
see all of this. And so that was coming up for me as you were giving those questions in just a very mundane example.
Yeah.
Right. But
It's an
it's
important one.
simple. It's
Yes.
important, I guess. Yeah. And so then, of course, my therapist and I, like, who cares listening to like what Cindy talked to her therapist about? But it was like, um, can I allow myself to rest? Right. And then we
Yes.
meet and this comes up.
This is perfect timing. You see,
Yeah.
yeah, I had a shaman who was a client one time, and they taught me something kind of cool. I got involved with a couple people that were part of that community, and here were the four shamanic laws of the universe, and I talk about these a lot. It starts when it starts. The right people show up. Very important on this one.
Mm,
The right people show up. What's happened is the only thing that could have happened,
mm.
and it ends when it ends.
Oh my
And
God.
today, the right people showed up for you, your therapist, and this podcast,
Yes.
and maybe your
And you.
body, maybe resting would be so good for you because who knows what you might be fighting in
Hmm.
your body and your system. That might be really
Yeah.
important.
Oh, that is so, so beautiful, those shamanic principles. Yeah. Wow. And it requires that trust, that faith in what it is.
Mhm.
That, Mm.
Mhm. I really think it's important for us to really listen, because something as simple as I'm not going to go today could be our guides telling us, I don't know if that's okay to say here or not, but it
Mhm.
could be our guides telling us, hey, that could be serious. Who knows what could happen if we didn't listen to it?
Yeah.
And I think it's important we do,
Mhm.
even as something as simple as a run, or, you know.
Right, exactly. And how can we also expand our yes to include that knowledge, right? We can get knowledge from the guides. We can, you know, have a belief system and also really like what these shamans say. We can, like all of these things, I think we limit ourselves so much. I'm pretty passionate about that to get the information from whatever source it is and then distill it into our own understanding.
Yes, yes. I think that's the most important part, integration of
Right.
everything we're learning in the whole process, right? Is
Yeah.
integrating the whole thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And especially
So
the
what
running with the immune system and the emotional system being on the same system. Think about that,
yeah,
right? Mhm.
right. Yeah, exactly. I think, oh, if I don't do it, then I'll feel anxious all day, but then I'm tired, right? So we could just go on and on. I probably should journal on this.
Yeah,
Not
that'd
make
be
news
great.
too much about my life.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's the perfect example.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is. It's a good one.
Mhm.
So as we kind of wrap up this big topic on the importance of saying no for self-care, what's
Mhm.
something that like you really want to remind therapists in either their own work or their work with clients around this?
Yeah, I would just say at the very beginning of, and this is coming to my mind right now as we're talking, and as you gave your example,
Mhm.
whoever's listening to this, and including us um, right now, really let that question land for yourself. Where in my life am I not saying no? Right? What is the impact? What's my belief system about myself? And who would I be if I did say no? A
Mhm.
lot of times it's I'd be selfish, I'd be not as good a person. You know, there's a lot of meaning behind all that. Um, but really to journal this ourselves and start practicing this, because it'll make us clear for the day as we start to, and it'll impact our sessions. It'll really help us. And then to also maybe process that with our therapist, and to self-care, I guess, is where I'm going with
Mhm.
this. Only because we wouldn't want anyone to be impacted the way that I was, where I was to the point of hospitalization and all kinds of things with my belly and my
Yeah.
lungs. And yeah, so we want it can get out of hand in a way that can be harmful to us.
Mhm. Right. Thank you for that. That's so helpful. And I also love that then it opens up that space to say yes. And today is another perfect example of that because your assistant set up our meeting and you thought we weren't even going to record, but you said yes anyhow. And then I was like, oh, well, let's just have our conversation. And look what a gift it's been.
Yes, I'm so glad. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it, um, and it was authentic,
Yeah.
because I didn't know that we were. Yeah, I love it.
It's the best. That's the best. So, both Don and I are being really authentic with you guys today, and I hope you can
Yes.
appreciate that. Don, tell us a little bit about Windows of Hope Counseling Center, the work you're doing, what people could find at windowsofhopecounseling.org, what you're offering, all of those things, because people will want to check this out and see how they could, also find out more about you.
Yeah, we're starting a community education page, and we're gonna start some classes. We're gonna be doing some couples workshops. We're going to be doing some retreats. We're going to do. We're going to be starting some lives. We're going to be doing some Zoom classes as well for couples in particular,
Mhm.
for couples work, for therapists. So whatever is interesting to you, it'll be listed on that community page. Some of the things that I'm writing like specifically this yes and no concept. I write about 2 pages on a concept, and then I do a journal entry or a send for your clients at the end
Wow.
on each of the pages that I write. So we're in the process of posting those now.
So
So
those
we'll,
are like tools that would be available to a
Mhm.
therapist. Hmm.
Yes, yes. So what they would do is go to the community education page. We're posting all the any podcasts that I'm doing, and we're posting anything that I'm writing about the podcast. So that
Wow.
and it's pretty easy reading and stuff you could pass out to your clients as well.
Oh, that's great. And with the continuing education, are you providing training for therapists also?
Yes. Hmm. It'll be they will get continuing education credits for that. I'm working with somebody right now who's going to be facilitating that for us,
Hmm.
so that you can
Amazing.
get your hours. More importantly, I'm going to be teaching some beautiful, compassionate connection work for couples, integrating imago relationship therapy, encountered couples relationship therapy, and compassionate inquiry therapy. So we'd be combining those processes to create the best effective sessions that we could have.
Amazing. And so you're going to train therapists in that combination of therapies for couples.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, I might want to do that. That sounds great.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah,
Do you have,
it's going to be fun. Uh-huh.
yeah, do you have to be Imago trained to do it?
No. Mm-mm. You don't
Okay.
have to be Imago trained, and it's not a rigid system. It's more concepts and practices and structure so that you can then become who
Hmm.
you are and evolve it into your practice. That's my hope.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's so great. That's so
Uh-huh.
great. So
Yeah.
there are ways that therapists can work with you to get training and to find resources. What else would you like to share with the audience?
Um, I can work with people that are out of the state of California, my students who are on the sliding scale. That group, that part
Uh-huh.
of the nonprofit cannot, because they're only getting licensed in California. But because I have the Imago certification, I can become an educator in that
Nice.
capacity. So I can work with couples um, directly if you're interested in working with me.
Hmm.
Or I can consult. I can be a consultant as well for therapists. So that's another way to utilize me for session work.
Hmm.
Um, we just wouldn't be able to refer your clients because they're out of the state
Right.
to the sliding
Right.
scale portion. Yeah, unfortunately, that's
Yeah.
just the way licensure
Well,
works.
we
Yeah.
just need more listeners in California. So I'm really excited that we have this connection now and people
Yes.
will get to check out this episode and we'll
Yes.
include all of that in the show notes for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And then we can offer a link to my notes on yes and no so that they can have that as well.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You're
And
welcome.
I want that too. That's great.
Wonderful. I hope everybody loves it. It's made such a difference in my life. Huge um, impact on how I show up and what I've been able to do. And um, I just love that I'm not ill all the time with a humidifier and inhaler and all the stuff that went with that. So,
Right.
and I really believe it was interesting, the transformation for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you are glowing, and I know you've enlightened so many of our listeners today and given us the confidence to try, um, looking at our no's and our yeses. So thank you so much from my heart. You are such a heart-centered therapist, Dawn, and I'm just super grateful and acknowledge you for the amazing work you're doing. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.